Yo guys, I've got another game analysis video here. We are playing as Attila of the Huns, and this game is on Emperor and on a continent's map, which we have conquered this whole continent here. And this was posted to the forum with the question of basically what to do next, or like, is it possible to win this game without conquering, or how to continue conquering once you've already conquered your continent? Because these AIs, we've got the Zulus 4 techs ahead, China as well, Denmark actually 5 techs ahead, and yeah, there are quite a few policies ahead of us as well. We're on 9, whereas these guys are on 12 or 13, and it's obviously a little bit tricky to get to them. And they're also in a load of defensive packs as well. They're like all defensively pacted, apart from the Zulus, who probably wouldn't be the easiest target either. So, I mean, it's got some responses, all with pretty good advice of basically, like, try and do a bit of exploring, because you've actually got astronomy here, and try and find like a city-state over on this continent to take out, and then you can at least like have a foothold in there and see what you can do from there. Because trying to attack like across the sea, especially without a fleet, is not going to go too well. And there's the other possibilities of coming up here and killing some of these city-states to keep getting the bonuses, since they don't have any allies and you're not allied to them. And also trying to manage the happiness as well, because you don't really want to be unhappy when you're doing military stuff. Being unhappy increases or decreases the rate of construction of new units and gives you a combat penalty as well. So that is the general advice of how to go in this kind of situation. But I kind of wanted to talk about something slightly different, which is the other side of authority games, which is just the managing of the empire. Because even on like the most crazy authority game, I feel like you're still going to be getting most of your yields just from your cities themselves. Like, even though you do get this the culture from kills and the science from kills, and we've got Orders and God of War here, so faith from kills as well. Like, there's still a lot of things that, like I said, I think you're still going to get the majority of your, probably even the vast majority of your, like, culture and science and stuff just from your cities. So it is a good idea to have them all doing the right stuff. So that's what we're going to focus on here. And we will start off with the main one that I have brought up before, and I'm sure you will know, but you really should be locking your tiles, I think. And I understand this might be more of an issue of people just not being bothered, as opposed to, like, obviously everyone knows that it is better if you do it yourself. But I just want to explain why it is important and how I personally do it, to the point where it doesn't really feel like it takes that much of the game. Like, especially, you know, some games you might focus it more, like in a tradition game where you want to be working different specialists and stuff. But like, in most games you'll just want to set them and come back not too regularly to have to deal with it again. So yeah, the reasons why you do want to do it. Now, main reason here is Governor likes to work a lot of food, although you have locked some yourself. And why this is not the best is that food doesn't really do that much. Like, food in itself doesn't give you anything at all, basically. Obviously, the reason to have food is to have more population, but the only reason to have more population is to work more tiles. But you could just be working those tiles right now instead of working the food. So it's kind of like you might as well just get on with working them. since having more food isn't really benefiting you more. And like I said, you can need them to work specialists, but probably not in this game since it's an Authority 1. I think you just want to be working all the best tiles that you can. There's not a lot of benefits to just having population for the sake of it. Like, I guess there's like some small ones, like the palace is like 1 science per 3 citizens, but that's not even that much, and most cities get barely any benefit. There are some benefits later on in the game, like a public school will give you 1 science for every 4 citizens, and museum 1 culture for every 4 citizens, broadcast towers 1 culture and tourism for every 2 citizens. And then there's other things, like later on the tiles will start all becoming better, so you get like agribusinesses and power stations that kind of make every tile worth working. So obviously more population is better then, but like at this point in the game it's honestly not really helping you, and it's actually kind of hurting you, because the more population you have essentially works out as more unhappiness. I guess I probably won't go through the full specifics, but you know, you get these yields modifier, I think, needs modifiers that are yields per citizen. So the more citizens you have, the more of the yields you'll need to stop them from being unhappy. So higher pop is actually a bad thing unless it is actually working useful tiles, essentially. And the other thing about the auto choosing tiles is that they do like to choose specialists. And one of the reasons this is bad is because of the urbanization unhappiness thing, which is where you're working too many specialists. Like, each city is allowed to work a certain amount. When you have a library, it allows you to work 1. It says 1 specialist in the city doesn't produce urbanization. And a Writers Guild allows you to work another 1, but we're working 4 here, so that's why we're getting 2 unhappiness from urbanization, and you don't really want that to be happening, especially because a lot of the times it's working things like markets, which just don't give that much. I mean, 6 gold is not that great. The other yields are generally worth a lot more than gold are. So those are the 2 main reasons why just leaving it to auto-choose the tiles is not a great idea, and why you want to be choosing them yourself. So now let me get on to how I do it. Basically, at this point in the game, I would say the most important thing for you is production, the most important yield. As I was mentioning about the unhappiness stuff, like, it's based on your yields per citizen. So the more buildings and stuff you can build, the less unhappiness you'll have. And some of them even have, like, this one says -1 unhappiness from poverty. So a lot of them will have stuff like that, where they'll just give less unhappiness once you built them. So it's a good idea to have as much production as possible so that you can get all the buildings built. I mean, you've got a lot of them done here, but some of these other cities are missing quite a few. Yeah, so production most important. Then I believe culture is the second most important. And then science. And culture is more important than science, in my opinion, because you can never really catch up on culture. Like, there is no catch-up mechanism at all. Obviously, there are ways to make culture, but once you're behind, you're always going to be behind the other people in culture. Whereas science, there actually are like mechanisms that make it so that if you're behind, you would do science quicker. So the main one is spies. I think they actually do more, like, the further behind you are in tech. And then the other one is that techs get reduced cost once you're behind, once somebody else has it and you don't. And you can also get, like, quite often there'll be the scholars in residence proposal that gets done as well, minus 20% cost for any tech that's already been researched by someone else. So that's why I think you want to make sure that culture is your priority. I mean, science is good too, so I wouldn't say science is like bad. I would just say if it's between science and culture, I would usually go culture. So that's kind of the way that I would order it. Now, obviously you want to have enough food so that you're not starving, but I don't think just working loads of farms for the sake of it. You know, maybe in the capital it's okay if you want to work a lot of specialists and stuff there, even as authority, but like here, this is really not doing anything for you. So I will just go through and change the tiles to what I would put them on. Okay, so that took me maybe 3 or 4 minutes or something, and now, but obviously that was doing every single tile in the entire empire. Now, from now on, what I would do is, at the beginning of every turn, you get these notifications, and every time a citizen is born in a city, you get the pop-up, you click on it, it will take you straight to the city, then you can go in this city and tell them what you want them to work. So it is much easier to do it that way, I think. Or the other option you have is each time you are in this menu where you're choosing what building to build, you can just have a look around and see if there's an unassigned one and assign them. There was also one thing in there that you may have noticed, which was that I basically stole some of these tiles off the puppeted city here because it's kind of pointless to have a puppeted city working good tiles when they're obviously worth more in some of your non-puppet cities. Yeah. So that is that. You can see our culture has gone up quite a bit. Science has gone down somewhat. I mean, potentially we could be not working some of these food tiles and working scientists instead. Maybe it's not necessary to do the writer here. Could do a scientist there instead. Actually, I should do this since there's the engineer coming. I guess you could let the capital grow, work more specialists there. So yeah, and our unhappiness has gone down a bit because we got rid of some of those urbanization people and we got some more yields as well, so less of some of the unhappiness sources. Okay, that is the main thing. And okay, I'll say one more thing. If you can't be bothered to do it, then at least just put all your cities on production focus. So then they're more likely to work the more useful tiles. If you leave it on default, then it's more likely to choose these food and merchant specialists and stuff that are not actually that useful. Okay, next thing, I suppose we will talk about Great Works once again because they have not been organised here. You could at least do this. You could also put Great Works in here. That would be the best thing to do, in which case you'll have to do some swappage with these guys, which also doesn't exactly take that long. Boom. And then you get the culture, 6 culture and tourism, and +4 science as well. Good stuff there. Now on to talking about buildings. So again, as I was saying earlier, production is normally the way you go initially with your buildings at least, and then you start building the things that they actually need for the yields. That's the best way to get everything done. So like, we don't have arena. Normally you get like arena to go along with the forge because it gives +2 production to the forge, and then you can get barracks and armories as well, which you have the 100% construction rate on. And then stuff like markets is pretty good for reducing unhappiness quite cheaply. And then, I mean, workshops are alright. You could actually get some chanceries here because you have got 2 city-state alliances. Chanceries give +2 production for each ally. And there's also some other allies you could get, like if you killed this camp over here, and if you sent a trade route down here, then you would have 4 alliances. So each chancery would be +8 production in the city, which would be pretty good. You know, stuff like stables. You're building a bank here. This bank is going to give you the +2 gold base and then +3 gold from the 1 gold tile that you're working, so +5 gold. Stable gives +3 base and then +2 production from the sheep tile here, so +5 production. Production is worth basically at least double what gold is worth. Generally, like you can see here, when you buy these buildings, you buy them for roughly the same amount as the hammer cost, except that when you buy it, it only does half the building. So yeah, that is why production is worth more than gold. And as well, for the units, they cost like twice as much as their production, and also you don't even get full experience on them. So definitely better to have higher production generally. Then we will talk about these tiles, some of these tiles. So you've put like a great scientist on that desert tile down there, and one up there as well. And obviously the logic you're using for that is like, oh, they're rubbish tiles that can't really do that much, so why not put a scientist on them? But in reality, I don't think that's the best way to do it. You're kind of assuming that you're somehow going to be working all of your tiles, but if you look here, loads of these tiles are not worked yet. And I'm sure you'll be able to find something to put on there by the time you ever manage to start working all the other tiles. So it would be better to have just put this on, like, maybe this floodplain over here, or this one or something. Because then you would basically have the same thing, except it would have +3 food, because it's a floodplain, instead of just a normal desert tile. And I guess maybe a better example is up here, where what I definitely would have done is put this guy onto this wheat here, because this farm is not a freshwater farm. It's going to give you +2 food, but you could already have this tile of +3 food, of 3 food, 1 production, and 9 science, all being worked in one place, and then you'd have another citizen that you could work, like, I don't know, whatever you wanted, a specialist, one of these farms, or another Eki, which is also what you definitely should be building with these workers, rather than, say, this farm and this farm. The Ekis are like your best thing right now. +2 food, +2 production, +1 culture is definitely a lot better than +4 food, or definitely better than the +2 food here. So those are really what you want to be building everywhere. Like over here, this is definitely much better, man. And that's really what your workers probably should be prioritizing over everything else, like this camp up here. 1 food and 1 gold. Or you could just chop down some forest and build some Ekis for like much better yields. That's what I would recommend. With these guys, and yeah, put your great people on like nicer tiles. And usually what I do is put them on tiles which don't have a very good like improvement that normally goes on them. So like some resources don't have particularly good improvements. Like even like these jades actually. I wouldn't say a jade quarry actually gives that much on its own. A lot of the bonus comes from the stonework, buffing the jade. Oh, and this amber definitely actually. Amber is quite a rubbish improvement. So put stuff like great people on top of those when possible. Okay, next thing we'll touch on spies quickly. You got the spy in Warsaw. Better move it to China next after you get the next deal, because they're further ahead in tech, so you'll get more options with them. And you've also got a mission here. And then I guess we will come to the more military aspects of things, which is the general way that this game panned out. So you obviously did a good job to kill the 2 people who are on your continent already in this game. It is pretty early. The thing is, you probably did basically too good a job, in that when you conquer people very early, you don't get as much benefit from it as you do when you conquer them a bit later on. Like, I've said this before many times, but I advocate for killing people in medieval era rather than classical era for quite a few reasons. So, Imperium policy. This scales with era, and it can be quite significant early on. You also have this religion, founder belief, where you get stuff for conquering a city. That also scales with era, so you get more of that as well. Next reason is you will actually have the courthouse and stuff. I mean, that's a minor thing, but you want to be able to build the courthouse as soon as possible to get rid of the occupied city penalty. And usually you'll have that roughly as you're going into a medieval era, because you probably will go chivalry first if you're authority. Yeah, and the other big thing is that you can make vassals instead of having to take all the cities. Puppeted cities, I would say, are quite bad right now. There's an unfortunate thing where they actually give unhappiness from urbanization, and it doesn't show up here on the numbers there, but you're actually getting 1 unhappiness from urbanization there, 2 here, and also 2 from Dublin. So that's actually 5 unhappiness, which is the difference between you being above 50% and below 50% right now. So I would kind of usually say either take the cities, like these cities were actually quite good, or raise them. And in this case, it definitely seems like it would have been a good idea to stop at Edinburgh and take the Celts as a vassal. Vassals do give you a couple of things. You can set their tax rate in this menu here, and they will actually give you quite a lot of money. You get 20% of these yields. You get some military units when you enter a new era, and you basically get someone to trade with, which can actually be very nice when, everyone starts hating you at some point when you're conquering. You also get more votes in Congress, which can genuinely be pretty useful to stop you getting sanctioned or stop other people getting stuff through that they want. So quite a lot of uses of having vassals. Definitely a lot more use than having one puppeted city that is giving you 4 gold per turn right now, and 2 unhappiness, and 1 culture per turn. What is this giving? Yeah, not that much either, 4 unhappiness. So these are probably not worth it. Personally, I probably would have not puppeted these ones. I would have just annexed them. And yeah, because they could actually be quite reasonable cities. You don't want to annex cities which are not good though, because I'm sure, as you know, it increases your policy and tech cost. So that's not a good idea either. But I would only puppet a city if it was in a strategic location, or if it had some resources around it that I really needed. So stuff for monopolies or strategics, but the city itself wasn't good enough to justify the 5% social policy increase. I'm not a huge fan of this city that you founded here as well. I'm not sure it is worth the 5%. I'm guessing you did it for the cocoa monopoly. And I'm definitely hoping that you did it with a pioneer at least instead of a settler. But it does seem very, very underdeveloped and will be for a while. You could have just annexed this city, bought the cocoa here and here. And there's even another one over here, because you needed 5 for the monopoly. And that would have been enough. Yeah, putting a city at this stage there, I just don't think it really gives enough. And I guess one more thing about if you waited a bit longer, then these cities would have been more built up than they were. I don't know exactly when you did take them, but I'm going to assume it was relatively early. You didn't get any wonders from conquering them. The only 2 wonders you have were built in the capital, which are good wonders. I like those 2. Terracotta Army and Petra are pretty amazing. Obviously you have this desert start here. So usually I would advise basically you weaken your neighbours and keep killing off their units and stuff. Make sure they don't get too powerful, and then conquer them in medieval. If you're able to do that at the start, as opposed to just running straight through them and conquering them, because you probably had unhappiness problems as well that slowed you down everywhere else. I also don't think this God of War pantheon is too good. Obviously you were killing units. How much culture does it even give? I really should have checked this. Does it give... because these, the authority stuff, that gives 8 culture when you kill a unit, I'm pretty sure. Does God of War give more? Because that's not really enough to justify it, I don't think. You could have had the Desert Pantheon here. Quite a few resources on Desert. Well, there's quite a few other pantheons that give you other things. Like I've mentioned before, Tolteri gods is a really, really good one. Basically, +3 production, 2 gold, and 1 faith in all your cities. So that would have helped you had more buildings everywhere as well, which would just put you in a better position generally than you are now, because only getting faith is not the most useful thing, and neither is the 10% production really, or the increased in range combat strength compared to other pantheons that can give you more yields and stuff to help everything else get going, as well as some faith for your religion. Probably on Emperor you could get a religion with God of Creation as well, because if you just build shrines and then monuments everywhere. But God of the Expanse is a pretty nice one as well. Actually works out giving you a decent amount of faith and production, and works well with the tribute policy. Does it scale with era? Scaling with game speed. Okay. That's a weird one. I mean, everything's supposed to. Alright, so yeah, that's kind of my points on maybe why you're feeling a bit like you're falling behind right now. Whereas that shouldn't necessarily be the case, especially not on Emperor. Like, even though we're doing authority here, you do want to be managing everything as well as possible. Please tell me this profit is not going here. Not anymore, I hope. I would even say just put it on the hills is better. I mean, you can have +2 production compared to just nothing from the normal desert. Yeah, I guess there are a few things about military actually as well. You do have Fountain of Youth, so I quite like that you went for March. I think it makes sense. But I would still recommend getting a medic. At least one medic, just to help all your units. Seems like a lot of these were built without any barracks or armories and stuff, which I usually would say try not to do. Maybe they're conscripts. Don't have many of the horse archers. Generally, if you have a unique unit, you want to build quite a few of them. They usually have like a lower cost, or you get a production bonus to building them as your civ. So yeah, these guys, they actually start with accuracy, so you can end up getting them better promoted. So you probably do want to have 4 or 5 of them at least, even if they're not the best unit, before they go obsolete, because they keep the benefits throughout the whole game. And these guys make great medics actually. You can go straight from accuracy to medic 1, medic 2. And you just need 2 promotions. Probably need more trebuchets. 1 is not going to cut it with some of the AI cities over there. As you get through the game, you will need trebuchets and cannons and stuff. So probably want 3 or 4 of them. Yeah, you may want to wait until gunpowder before you go across. You've got a decent amount of money, so you can upgrade your units. That was another thing I was going to say about banks actually. I normally would only get a bank if I was going to use the spend gold to purchase stuff in the city, but I'm guessing you're not going to be doing that because you're going to need the money to upgrade the units, so it's not that useful in that sense. Another thing is you get 2 culture for having a garrison in a city. So if you were garrisoning all of your cities, that would be, well, all the non-puppet ones would be +2 culture each, so you're garrisoning 3 of them right now, be an extra 12 culture at least per turn. Normally you're doing the correct thing. Use these guys as the garrisons because they don't use a unit supply as long as you don't upgrade them, so that makes them pretty nice to use there. You can just leave them chilling there and it doesn't really matter. Also, pikemen are not obviously as good as a longswordsman, and longswordsmen are really, really much better, basically. Like, you could have had more of them. You did have the iron to build them. Maybe these pikemen came from upgraded warriors, but I usually like to try and get quite a few longswordsmen before I get to gunpowder. I mean, actually, to be fair, we are Attila, so we have that bonus to killing units with knights. I would have definitely gone shock on all of these knights, because you want to be getting the mounted melee unit killing people so that you can capture them. Yeah. And then you want to use your trebuchets to attack cities, and occasionally infantry. If you get drill on infantry, they can be decent. But having the long swordsman is much better because they get the cover 1 promotion, and that will stick with them for the rest of the game. I mean, and they just have way more combat strength, but once you get to tercios, they will all become like the same unit, because they'll all upgrade into tercios, but all of your longswordmen ones will keep the cover promotion. So yeah, fairly short one there. I hope I explained myself well on the tiles and stuff and the building choices. Like we said, you had pretty good advice to go and find a city-state to take out. You could either wait for gunpowder to upgrade to cannons and tercios, or just try and go across right now because you do have astronomy. Could be a bit of a risk going without boats. I mean, you're not at war with anyone, but if they declare war on you while you're in the sea, that's obviously pretty bad. And then if you get a city, then you can use it to like heal your units and stuff as you attack one of the major civs. You could also consider locking growth on some of the cities actually. Like, if they don't have any more good things to work, not really much point letting them grow and just get more and more unhappy. Because if you ever do end up at war with someone and you lose all your resource trades, the unhappiness is going to become even worse. And like I said, it is good to get it above 50% for building units and not having the combat strength modifier. And I'll give you one last little tip here, which is that you've actually got a possible city here with 2 Great Barrier Reef tiles. You could either put it here or here, obviously with a pioneer. And you also get to propose a World Congress proposal right now, so you could go for natural heritage sites. And since you're already working the Fountain of Youth here, and Krakatoa over here, and maybe more that I haven't seen, that would be 4 different natural wonders, all that are buffed up. So that could be a nice little boost for you. But yeah, good luck man, and I hope I could help. And do send in your games if you've got any guys that you want me to look at, and subscribe on that, and I'll see you guys soon.